It was one of those mornings where nothing quite fit right. The sky had that dull gray haze to it. Not quite rain, not quite dry. A thin wind pushed last season's leaves across the cracked pavement of a sleepy town called Ridgeway Springs. Don't miss a moment. New adventures drop every day, so subscribe now. Just a blip on the map, the kind of town people pass through but never circle back to. But for Noah Carter, it was all he had left. Noah was 38, and he wore his years like a flannel shirt, rugged, worn, dependable. He'd once been a certified mechanic at a dealership in the city, before everything turned sideways. Now he worked out of an old garage behind his house, taking in what work he could. Oil changes, brake pads, patching up exhausts. Nothing glamorous, but it was honest and it kept the lights on, some of the time. He had a 7-year-old boy named Eli, bright-eyed, wild-haired, the kind of kid who asked too many questions and dreamed of dragons and rockets. Noah lived for that boy ever since. Eli's mother walked out on them 2 years ago. Some people crumble when love leaves. Noah had just kept going. That particular Tuesday morning, Noah was elbow-deep in the engine of a '99 Ford that had seen better centuries. He'd bartered the job for groceries. Miss Delaney, a retired schoolteacher, had brought by a sack of potatoes, a carton of eggs, and a half-dozen cans of soup as payment. It wasn't much, but in Ridgeway Springs that counted. He wiped sweat from his brow with a rag that used to be a decent t-shirt when a sound interrupted him. The strained sputter of an unfamiliar car engine, followed by silence, then cursing. Subscribe for more amazing content every week. Noah poked his head around the corner of the garage and saw her. She was standing beside a sleek black Mercedes-Benz SUV, one that looked wildly out of place on their quiet, dusty street. One of the tires had blown out, and smoke drifted lazily from under the hood. She was wearing a beige trench coat and heels, tapping her phone furiously with a look of growing frustration. She looked like someone from a magazine ad, perfectly put together and totally miserable. "Trouble?" Noah called out, already walking her way. The woman glanced up, startled. Her eyes flicked over him. The grease-stained hands, the denim jacket, the worn boots. And for a second, Noah thought she might just tell him to mind his own business. But instead, she sighed. "Yes, the engine overheated and I have no signal out here. My roadside service is about as useful as this phone right now." Noah looked the vehicle over, nodding thoughtfully. "Pop the hood. Let me take a look." She hesitated. "Are you a mechanic?" "Sort of," he said with a tired grin. "I'm the unofficial repair shop of Ridgeway Springs." She stared at him, uncertain. "How unofficial?" "I take potatoes as payment," he said, lifting a brow. "That unofficial?" She blinked, then chuckled softly despite herself. "All right, you've got 5 minutes before I start panicking again." Noah smiled. That was something. He leaned under the hood, sniffed the air, tapped a hose, and grunted. "You've got a busted radiator hose and no coolant left. Lucky you pulled over when you did. Could have cracked your engine block." She folded her arms. "Can you fix it?" "I can patch the hose and refill the coolant. Get you to the nearest real garage at least. Give me 20 minutes. "Thank you," she said, almost surprised at her own gratitude. Noah nodded and jogged back to his garage. He rummaged through a bin, found a hose clamp and sealant tape, grabbed a couple bottles of coolant, and returned to the Mercedes. She was leaning against the car, arms crossed against the chill. "You're not from around here," Noah said as he worked. Sharp observation. "Your shoes gave it away." He grinned. She smiled faintly. "I was on my way to Oak Ridge. I had a meeting." "Important one?" "Not anymore," she muttered. He didn't press. He knew the tone, weary, layered with frustration, laced with something she wouldn't say. "I'm Noah, by the way," he said after a beat. There was a pause. "Rebecca," he looked up. "Nice to meet you, Rebecca." "Likewise." Noah. The job wasn't difficult, just delicate. He worked quickly, his hands sure and practiced. In 15 minutes, he had the patch in place and the coolant pouring in. As he worked, they talked, mostly her asking him about the town and him deflecting gently. He didn't mention the foreclosure letters on his kitchen table, or the unpaid power bill, or the fact that Eli's shoes were too tight, and he couldn't afford new ones yet. She didn't mention where she came from or where she was going, not in detail. But her voice changed when she spoke of cities, fast-paced meetings, investment portfolios. She was polished, sharp, used to control, and being stranded on a dusty road in a tiny town was clearly driving her crazy. "There," he said, tightening. "The clamp. She's good to go, at least until Oak Ridge." Rebecca peered under the hood, then at him. "Thank you." "No charge," Noah said, stepping back. She raised a brow. "That's generous." He shrugged. "You looked like you needed a break. Everyone does now and then." Rebecca studied him almost suspiciously, as if she didn't quite believe there were still people who helped without a string attached. She opened her purse and pulled out a card. "If the patch doesn't hold," she said, "call that number. It's my office. Someone will send help." Noah took the card. It was minimalist, thick stock, embossed lettering, the kind that screamed expensive. He squinted at the name. Rebecca Langford. He didn't recognize it. Why would he? She was just a tired woman with a fancy car and a sharp tongue. Nothing more. She climbed into her SUV, paused, and looked at him again through the open window. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked. Noah smiled faintly. "Every day." And with that, she drove off, the Mercedes humming back to life and disappearing down the road. Noah stood there for a long moment, holding the card between two fingers. Then he glanced at the name again and slipped it into his back pocket. He didn't know it yet, but Rebecca Langford wasn't just anyone. She was the billionaire CEO of Langford Holdings, and she owned the mortgage on his home. But for now, he was just the man who'd patched her car, with no clue that fate had just taken a sharp left turn. And somewhere in the house behind him, Eli's laughter echoed through the window, unaware that life was about to change for them both, in ways Noah couldn't imagine. The next morning came with a light mist and the hum of early birdsong. Noah Carter was up before sunrise, sipping stale coffee and thumbing through a stack of unopened mail that had become more of a fixture than something to be dealt with. He didn't need to open them to know what they said. Second notices, final warnings. His mortgage had slipped into the kind of territory that made the bank get creative with its threats. But he had a boy to feed and work to do, so Noah slid the letters aside and pulled on his boots. He'd promised old Mr. Halvers a tune-up on his pickup and couldn't afford to lose even the smallest job. Ridgeway Springs didn't have enough opportunities for people to pick and choose. As he walked out to the garage, he paused and glanced back toward the road. He wondered briefly about the woman from the day before. Rebecca. The name had echoed in his mind all night. Not just because she was beautiful, though she was, but because there was something about her that had stuck with him. The way she'd looked lost even when everything about her screamed control, and the way she'd asked him if he'd ever thought about leaving. He'd never admitted it out loud, but yes, he had. Ridgeway was full of memories, but not all of them were good. Still, leaving took money, and money took time, and time was something he was always short on. Noah pushed those thoughts aside and got to work, wrench in hand, heart steady. But fate, as it often does, wasn't finished with him. That same morning, in a glass-paneled office 50 miles away, Rebecca Langford sat at a long table surrounded by advisors, legal aides, and finance executives. She was the kind of woman who commanded a room without raising her voice, and though her posture was perfect, her mind wasn't on the meeting. She kept thinking about the man with the kind eyes and calloused hands, the mechanic with a lopsided grin who hadn't asked for anything, who'd refused payment like it was some kind of virtue. She hadn't told anyone about the roadside incident. It wasn't worth the noise, but something about him had scratched at the surface of her thoughts. She didn't like loose threads, and Noah Carter was a loose thread. So when the meeting ended, she pulled up a file, one she hadn't looked at in months. Langford Holdings owned a number of small-town mortgages and properties, many acquired during the expansion years. One, of those names stared back at her now. Noah Carter, Ridgeway Springs. It was purely business. They'd bought the bank that held his mortgage, along with hundreds of others. Nothing personal. But now it was personal, wasn't it? Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Was it coincidence, fate? The universe playing matchmaker with foreclosure papers? She closed the file but left it open in her mind. Maybe she'd keep an eye on Mr. Carter, just to make sure he wasn't about to lose everything. Not because she felt anything. Of course not. She was just being thorough. Back in Ridgeway, the days passed without event. Noah finished repairs, stretched every dollar, and spent evenings helping Eli with his reading. There were nights he went to bed hungry to make sure his son didn't. But he never complained. That wasn't who he was. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived that wasn't like the others. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a final notice. It was an invitation. Langford Holdings was launching a community initiative in Ridgeway Springs, and they wanted local small business owners to attend a luncheon at the town hall. Free meal, networking, maybe a small grant or partnership opportunity. No expectations. Noah was skeptical. He didn't trust corporations. They always took more than they gave. But free food meant something to someone living off cans of soup. So he cleaned up, shaved for the first time in weeks, and showed up in a clean shirt that still smelled a little like oil. The town hall was busier than he expected. People mingled, voices low but hopeful. A buffet table offered actual meat, real chicken, roasted vegetables, buttery rolls. Noah piled his plate high and found a corner where he wouldn't be noticed. And then she walked in. Rebecca, no trench, coat this time. She wore a navy suit, tailored, powerful. Her hair was tied back, her face calm and unreadable. But when her eyes scanned the room and landed on him, they softened, just for a moment. Then she crossed the floor with a grace he'd never seen in Ridgeway before. "Mr. Carter," she said, stopping in front of him. "We meet again." Noah stood, blinking. "Miss Langford, this is unexpected." "I could say the same," she replied with a slight smile. "I didn't expect to find my roadside mechanic here." He smiled back, unsure of her tone. "Didn't know this was your thing." "It wasn't," she admitted, "until it was." People were watching now. She was clearly someone important and he was clearly someone who wasn't. But she didn't seem to care. She gestured toward a quieter table and he followed, still trying to figure out what game was being played. "I looked into your file," she said after they sat. "My file?" Noah asked, confused. She nodded. "Your mortgage is part of a property acquisition Langford Holdings made last year. Your lender was bought out. You're technically a Langford client now." Noah's heart sank. "So, what does that mean?" She saw the fear in his eyes, the kind of fear that only comes from being one check away from losing everything. She softened her voice. "It means I have discretion over certain accounts, and I believe in second chances." Noah stared at her. "You're offering me a second chance?" Rebecca folded her hands. "I'm offering you options: a restructure, reduced interest, deferred payments for 6 months, a grant to upgrade your garage equipment if you register the business officially." He couldn't speak for a moment. Then he whispered, "Why?" "Because I can," she said simply. "And because you helped me when I needed it, without asking who I was, without expecting anything." Noah blinked hard. He wasn't used to kindness from people in suits. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." He nodded slowly. "I will." And that night, as he tucked Eli into bed and sat alone at the kitchen table, Noah Carter stared at the offer Rebecca had handed him and wondered if the wind had finally changed. He still didn't know the full truth, that the woman who'd offered him salvation was worth billions, that she was used to boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions, that she was making an exception for him. But something told him this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. It had been 4 days since the luncheon, 4 days since Rebecca Langford, the woman with high heels and billion-dollar authority, sat across from Noah Carter and offered him a lifeline. Noah had reread the documents a dozen times. A 6-month mortgage deferment, a zero-interest grace period, a grant for small business registration and equipment, contingent only on Noah formalizing his shop. No strings, no fine print, just a chance to breathe. He didn't trust it. He didn't trust anything that came too easy. Life had trained him that way. Every blessing had come paired with a cost. But Eli had noticed. There was food in the fridge. Again, fresh vegetables, real meat. His shoes no longer pinched his toes. His lunchbox wasn't just packed, it was full. Still, Noah hadn't signed. He wasn't sure if it was pride or fear. Maybe both. He hadn't told Eli much, only that someone was trying to help them. Someone who might be the reason they could keep living in the house with the sagging porch and creaky stairs. Then came the knock. It was late afternoon, the sun still floating low over the rooftops. Noah was in the garage, finishing a brake job for a customer who'd promised cash by the weekend. He wiped his hands on a towel and stepped into the front yard, expecting a neighbor or maybe the mailman, with another dreaded envelope. It was Rebecca, standing on his gravel driveway in a windbreaker, jeans and sneakers, still stylish but less polished, more real. Noah blinked. "You're here? I figured you weren't going to call," she said with a half-smile. "So I came to you." He glanced over his shoulder. "I thought you had people for that sort of thing." "I do," she replied. But this felt different. Noah stepped aside and motioned her in. The house was small but clean, though lived in. A worn couch, a wobbly table, a wall of drawings done in crayon. Rebecca looked around and took it all in without judgment. "Where's your son?" she asked. "At his friend's house down the block. Thursdays are movie night." Rebecca nodded. She stayed near the door, not quite stepping over the threshold into the deeper parts of his world. "I haven't signed anything yet," Noah said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I figured," she said softly. "Why not?" "Because I don't get it," he replied. "People like you don't help people like me, not without something in return." Her eyes studied him. "You're not wrong. That's the way the world usually works." "So what's different this time?" Rebecca hesitated. "I've been doing this for a long time, building companies, acquiring properties, making sure people on paper make the right numbers add up. But I forgot that behind every file, there's a person, a story. You reminded me." Noah shook his head. "That still doesn't answer why." "Because I needed someone," she said. "And you didn't ask for anything, you just helped. Do you know how rare that is? Especially for someone who didn't have anything to spare?" Noah looked away. "I didn't fix your car expecting to get anything from it." "I know. That's why I'm standing in your living room." There was a long silence. A quiet hum from the fridge. A creak from the old wood under her boots. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. "New documents," she said. "I added something." He opened it. Another grant. This one to support apprenticeships. Help hiring someone. Training programs, even a community loan to expand if he wanted it. "You think I want to build an empire out of a shack in Ridgeway?" he asked, more amused than angry. "I think," she said, "you've been doing it with nothing. Imagine what you could do with a little help." Noah folded the papers but didn't answer. His mind was racing with possibilities he didn't dare entertain yet. "Have dinner with me," Rebecca said suddenly. He blinked. "What?" "Not a date," she clarified quickly. "Just a thank you, or a negotiation, or whatever you need it to be." Noah tilted his head. "You don't seem like someone who asks twice." "I'm not," she said. "So say yes before I come back with legal counsel." He chuckled. "All right, fine. Dinner." She smiled, and for a moment, her edges softened. Then she nodded and turned back toward the door. "I'll pick you up tomorrow, 7? "Wait, you're picking me up?" "You're not the only one who knows how to turn a wrench," she said, giving a little wink. "Besides, I'd like to see what Ridgeway considers a date night. As she disappeared down the driveway, Noah stood in the doorway, envelope in hand, heart thumping harder than he expected. He wasn't a man who got nervous, but there was something about her that threw him off balance in a way he hadn't felt in years. That night, he sat at the table again. Same spot, same overhead light. Eli was asleep in his room, snoring softly, unaware that his father was considering doing something rare. Hoping. The next evening came fast. Rebecca showed up not in a luxury car, but in a silver pickup that looked like it had seen enough wear to belong. She wore a soft green sweater and boots, and for the first time Noah realized how deliberately she'd blended in. She could have towered over this town like a queen, but instead she kept finding ways to meet it at eye level. They drove 10 minutes, outside of town to a quiet diner tucked behind a gas station. Noah hadn't been there in months. The owner, a quiet woman named Jolene, waved them in and seated them in a booth with a window view of the parking lot and the hills beyond. Over chili and cornbread, they talked. About nothing at first. Eli's obsession with dinosaurs, the weird way Ridgeway's Main Street was always under construction, the time Rebecca accidentally signed off on a $10 million investment in a drone company without realizing they made delivery drones shaped like flamingos. Then it turned into something more. She asked about his dreams, and he admitted he used to want to open a real shop. Not just a garage, but a full-service repair center, something with dignity, jobs for others, a place where Eli could grow up proud. He asked about her life, and she confessed that success had cost her friends, time, love, that she wasn't sure if what she'd built was worth what she'd lost. By the time the plates were cleared, there was a calm between them. Not quite romantic, not yet, but something unspoken. On the ride home, Rebecca said something that stuck with him long after she drove off. "Do you ever think people like us were meant to collide?" He smiled. "I don't know. Maybe we're just two people who took a wrong turn at the right time." She nodded slowly. "Maybe." That night, after Eli was asleep and the house had gone quiet, Noah took the envelope from the kitchen drawer, and he signed. Not because he needed a handout, but because someone had offered him a hand up. He didn't know where the path was leading, but he knew who he wanted to walk it with. A week after their quiet dinner at the Hilltop Diner, Noah Carter noticed something peculiar. Things were shifting. Not dramatically, not like lightning or earthquakes, but slowly, steadily, as though the earth beneath his feet was finally tilting in his favor. The envelope he had once stared at with hesitation now sat neatly filed in a kitchen drawer, signed, returned, and accepted, and with it came changes that felt, frankly, surreal. A truck arrived one morning with new tools, a lift, a tire balancer, a diagnostic scanner that Noah had only ever dreamed of using, paid for by the grant Rebecca had arranged. Another package included branded uniforms, dark blue with Carter's Auto and Repair stitched above the chest. A subtle shift, but a loud declaration. Noah was officially a business owner now. Legitimate, licensed, certified. Eli, eyes wide with curiosity, wandered the garage after school, asking what each tool did, pretending to be Noah's assistant. Noah let him hold the flashlight and showed him how to read a dipstick, beaming with a quiet pride he hadn't felt in years. But the biggest change? Rebecca. She hadn't vanished like he'd expected her to. She kept showing up, sometimes in person, other times with a phone call or a note dropped off at the garage with coffee, and a dry remark about the town's lack of decent lattes. She wasn't smothering, just consistent. And in Noah's world, consistency was more powerful than flowers or flattery. One afternoon, while Noah was elbow-deep in an engine and Eli sat on the garage floor doodling race cars, Rebecca pulled. Up in her silver truck, stepped out wearing sunglasses and jeans, and held up a brown paper bag. "Lunch," she said, "and I swear it's not from the diner this time." Noah wiped his hands and smiled. "You know you don't have to keep feeding me, right?" "Yes, but I like doing it, and I like seeing you look confused every time I do." He chuckled and gestured her inside. They ate on the workbench, roast beef sandwiches and cold sodas, while Eli proudly showed Rebecca his drawing of a turbo-fueled monster car with flying tires. "That's impressive," she said with genuine delight. "Is this the model for your dad's next big invention?" Eli grinned. "Yep, and he's going to sell it to everyone in the whole world, even billionaires." Noah nearly choked on his soda, but Rebecca just smiled. "Well, I'll be first in line." She stayed longer that day, helped sweep the shop floor even though Noah tried to stop her, talked with Eli about school and comic books, her heels traded for sneakers that now had a dusting of grease on them. Later, as the sun began to dip and Eli headed back inside to watch cartoons, Noah leaned against the garage doorway, watching her. "You don't belong here," he said softly. Rebecca turned to him. "What makes you think that?" "You're polished, sharp. People like you usually drop in, make a speech, and disappear into glass towers. Not hang around talking about turbo tires with 7-year-olds. She shrugged. "Maybe I've had enough of glass towers." He looked at her for a long moment, and for once didn't try to second-guess her motives. He just let himself believe. She meant it. "I don't know what you're doing here, Rebecca," he said, "but I'm glad you are." She smiled and her voice dropped. "I don't know what I'm doing either, but I'm not leaving." Noah didn't press her. He didn't need to, because something had changed in the air between them. It wasn't flirtation. It was deeper than that. Trust, maybe. Mutual understanding. A connection that neither of them could fully explain, but both had started to rely on. Still, the world outside their little bubble hadn't gone silent. Word was spreading through Ridgeway Springs. People noticed Rebecca's presence. They whispered about her truck parked outside the Carter garage. They noticed the new tools, the name tags, the subtle transformation of a rundown shack into a legitimate business. Some asked questions. Others drew conclusions, and some didn't like it. One evening, Noah returned home to find a note slipped under his front door. No name, just bold letters scrawled across it. "Watch who you get in bed with. Some gifts come with strings, here." Stared at it for a long time before crumpling it and tossing it in the trash, but the words lingered. Later that night, he called Rebecca. She picked up on the second ring. "Carter's Auto, after hours. What's your emergency?" "There's something you should know," he said. "I got a note today. No name. Just a warning." There was a pause on the line. Then her voice turned serious. "You think it's because of me?" "Maybe. Maybe not. But it's Ridgeway. People talk." Rebecca exhaled. "I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize." He said, "I just wanted you to hear it from me, in case things start getting uncomfortable." "They already are," she said, "but that doesn't mean I'm backing off." Noah smiled quietly. "Didn't think you would." The next day, she arrived with donuts for Eli and a scowl on her face. "I've dealt with bigger scandals than a mechanic who fixed my car," she said. "If someone has a problem with us, they can take a number." Noah laughed, even as a part of him worried. Not for himself, but for her. Because Ridgeway had always protected its own, and they didn't always take kindly to outsiders shaking things up. Still, the shop kept growing. More clients started showing up. A retired farmer who needed his tractor fixed, a young woman whose rusted sedan wouldn't start, a landscaper who offered to help Noah fix up the garage sign in exchange for brake work. People were watching, but they were also coming. And business meant hope. Hope meant stability. And that was worth every sideways glance in town. One evening, as they closed up shop, Rebecca lingered by the door. "I have to go out of town for a few days," she said. "Langford board meeting in Chicago. It's mandatory." Noah tried to act casual. "Sure, no problem. Handle your billion-dollar empire," she smirked. "You'll miss me." "I will," he said honestly. There was a quiet moment between them, too brief, too charged. Then she added, "And when I come back, I'd like to take you and Eli out. Just the three of us. Maybe get away for a weekend." Noah blinked. You serious? As a market correction, she teased. He nodded slowly. I'll think about it. She leaned forward, kissed his cheek gently, and walked away. Noah stood there long after the taillights disappeared. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving, he was living. And that feeling, that rare, warm, trembling hope, was starting to feel real again. But as with all things in life, good fortune is never left alone for long. Because far away, in a conference room perched above the skyline of Chicago, a man in a Navy suit was looking at a report, one that detailed Langford Holdings' community initiatives, one that showed unusual discretionary spending in a town called Ridgeway Springs. The man narrowed his eyes and frowned. 3 days. That's how long Rebecca was gone. Noah told himself it didn't matter. She had a company to run, a billion-dollar empire to steer, and he had brake pads to replace, invoices to file, and Eli's school science project to help with, something involving vinegar and baking soda that turned the kitchen into a battlefield. But truth be told, he missed her. He missed the rhythm she brought, the early afternoon visits with her sarcastic remarks and thoughtful meals, the sound of her laughter bouncing off the cinder-block walls of the garage, the quiet way she made him feel seen. Ridgeway was quieter without her. On the 4th day, he stood outside the garage sipping coffee when an unfamiliar black SUV pulled up. Out stepped a man in a pressed suit and shiny shoes, looking as if he'd taken a wrong turn on the way to Wall Street. He walked up briskly, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and calculating. Noah Carter? He asked. Who's asking? Mark Hensley, Langford Holdings, Director of Financial Oversight. The man didn't offer a handshake, just a firm nod. Noah's stomach tensed. I'm here regarding recent financial movements connected to one of our discretionary funds, Hensley continued. Specifically, a series of investments made into this property and your business. Noah crossed his arms. You mean the grants? The paperwork your legal team processed and signed? Hensley gave a thin smile. Correct. I'm not here to dispute legality, but I do have questions about motivations. Before Noah could respond, the SUV door opened again, and Rebecca stepped out. She looked composed but cold, a controlled fire beneath her calm expression. Mark, she said. You weren't invited. Rebecca, he replied coolly. Board wanted answers. I was sent to collect them. I'll handle this. Hensley raised an eyebrow. It's unorthodox, Rebecca. This mechanic receives thousands in grants, loan forgiveness tools, and you're spending personal time here? It's not your concern. It becomes our concern when your decisions reflect potential conflict of interest. Noah stepped in. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't manipulate or scheme. She came to me. And you accepted the money, Hensley said without looking at him. Rebecca's voice tightened. Leave, Mark. Now. He studied her for a beat, then glanced at Noah once more before walking back to the SUV. The vehicle drove off in silence. Noah turned to her. That happen a lot in your world? More than you'd think, she muttered. He nodded slowly. They think you're giving away the company for a guy with a wrench. They think I'm losing control of myself, of my emotions, of the business. They've been waiting for a reason to say it out loud. She looked tired, the kind of tired that didn't come from lack of sleep but from holding 100 invisible weights. I didn't mean to cause problems for you, Noah said softly. You didn't. She reached for his hand, fingers gentle, but firm. This was always going to happen. I just didn't expect it so soon. They stood like that for a moment, silent, the gravel crunching beneath their feet as a breeze rolled in. Later that day, she told him the truth about how Langford Holdings owned more than just real estate and logistics. It owned stories, legacies, debt, including the mortgage on Noah's house, not directly, 3 subsidiaries removed, but the paper trail led back to her desk. I didn't know at first, she said. But once I found out, I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. Noah didn't yell, didn't storm off. He sat on the edge of the workbench, eyes lowered. "So what now?" he asked. "You gave me help while holding my home in your back pocket." "I don't want your house, Noah. I just wanted to undo something I didn't know I'd done." He breathed out slowly. "It's a lot, Rebecca. I know, I care about you, but this feels like a rigged deck." She didn't argue, just sat beside him. "I'll have the mortgage bought out," she said. "Transferred out of Langford's portfolio to a trust in your name. You'll owe no one, not even me." He looked over at her. "You'd do that?" She met his gaze. "I already started the paperwork." Noah laughed, not with joy, but disbelief. "You really are impossible," she smiled. "So are you." They didn't speak of it again that day. Not the mortgage. Not the board. Not Hensley's little visit. Instead, they cooked dinner together. Pasta and garlic bread. Eli showed off his volcano, and Rebecca let him explain every bubble and fizz like it was NASA-grade engineering. When Eli went to bed, Rebecca lingered in the doorway. "I should head back. I have a conference call at 9. Noah nodded, then hesitated. "You ever think about stopping?" he asked. "Walking away from all that?" She laughed quietly. "Every day." He looked at her for a long time. "What's stopping you?" Rebecca didn't answer, just smiled faintly and slipped out into the night. The next morning, Noah found another envelope, this time from a local bank. Inside was a deed, the mortgage officially transferred. No lien, no fine print. Just a stamped, certified copy showing ownership in his name. He stood on the porch with it in his hands, staring at the signature on the bottom line. Rebecca Langford. Later that week, Noah hosted a barbecue. Not a big event, just friends, neighbors, a few customers who'd turned into regulars. The grill smoked, kids ran around the yard, Eli climbed trees, and the garage doors stood open with pride. And Rebecca came, not in heels, not in suits. She wore jeans and a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. She brought coleslaw and watermelon slices and got ketchup on her fingers without caring. When someone asked how she and Noah met, she just smiled and said, "He saved me on the worst day of my life." Noah added, "And she ruined mine, in the best way." People laughed, but those who looked closely could see the truth underneath. By the end of the evening, the sun had dropped low, painting the sky in bruised orange and soft violet. Rebecca stood beside Noah, watching Eli chase fireflies with the other kids. "You ever regret helping me on that road?" she asked. He shook his head. "That day changed my life." She glanced sideways. "Mine too." For a while, they didn't speak. Then, Noah said, "So what now? You stay in Ridgeway or go back to Towers and Suits?" Rebecca smiled slowly. "I've been thinking, maybe Langford Holdings needs a satellite office, right here, in town." He grinned. "And what would you do here?" She looked up at him. "Start over." And this time he didn't question. It didn't ask what she meant, didn't push her away. He just reached for her hand, laced his fingers through hers, and held on. Enjoyed part 1? Part 2 is on the way. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay tuned. Part 2 is on the way. Don't forget to like and subscribe.